A man tragically passed away in an accident while working away from home, and his family received a compensation of 600,000 yuan. Upon hearing this, his ex-wife, who had been divorced from him for 7 years, rushed over. She claimed that she and their son had been living in hardship all these years and demanded that the money be used as child support for their son. She was resolute in her stance and pressured the man's parents, threatening to exhume the body for an autopsy if they didn't agree to give her the money. The woman originally thought she could easily secure the 600,000 yuan, but she was shocked to discover that her son was not actually her ex-husband's biological child. Upon learning the truth, her former in-laws immediately kicked her out of the house. In a desperate bid to claim the compensation, the woman quickly called in a mediator. While recounting her story, she embellished the details and twisted the facts to her favor. As soon as she met the mediators, she led them to a room and pointed at it, claiming that her son cried there every day, while her heartless in-laws, intent on keeping the compensation for themselves, didn't even care about their own grandson. She explained to the mediators that a few months ago, her husband had tragically died in an accident, and the family received 600,000 yuan in compensation. To get her hands on the money, she had carefully planned her moves, first bringing her son to her ex-husband's funeral, and then sobbing inconsolably in front of everyone. However, when she approached her in-laws to claim the compensation, they turned against her. Not only did they refuse to give her a single penny, but they also denied her son's identity on the spot. While speaking to the mediators, the woman deliberately omitted the ex from ex-in-laws and ex-husband, making her story sound more convincing. The mediators, outraged by her account, immediately accompanied her to demand an explanation. But when the mediators mentioned her ex-husband, her former mother-in-law suddenly burst into tears.
这个再试过，和你慢慢讲，慢慢讲，慢慢讲。我知道您儿子去世，您节哀是吧？我们今天过来不是其他的意思，就说让小孩认祖归宗是吧？你儿子好歹留个血脉是吧？
The former mother-in-law said to the mediator, "It's not that they didn't want to acknowledge this grandson, but what this ex-daughter-in-law did was simply inhumane. That day, her son had just been buried, and this woman couldn't wait to come demanding money. She even threatened that if they didn't give her the money, she would abandon their grandson on the streets to fend for himself." The former mother-in-law, still immersed in grief, was furious beyond measure when she heard this. She immediately drove the woman out of the house, because they discovered that this grandson might very well not be her son's biological child.
您节哀，不要太伤心了。
起了，挣这些还买个奶，买个奶。
儿子还有个孙子是不？
这个跟你儿才子，我是嫁给的，
你说这是假的？
是嫁给的，我的带大的跟啊，就是还买啥个给的。
Hearing her former mother-in-law's words, the woman reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She jumped up, shouting loudly, pointing at her former mother-in-law's nose and demanding, "What evidence do you have to say the child isn't my ex-husband's?" Then the woman continued, "When I was pregnant, it was my ex-husband who took me to buy the medicine to protect the pregnancy. How could this child not be his?" Seeing the woman still stubbornly refusing to admit the truth, the former mother-in-law decided not to hold back anymore. She walked into the room, brought out a test report, and showed that it clearly stated the grandson had no blood relation to them.
这个结果是什么？
这个爷孙不一样吗？这是 DNA 分析结果，
就是说，就排除他们的关系。
孙爷的关系了。
Who would have thought that even after seeing the authoritative proof, the woman refused to acknowledge the DNA results? She insisted that this was just a petty trick by her former mother-in-law's family to hog her ex-husband's compensation money. At that moment, her former father-in-law, who had been out handling some affairs, returned. He told the mediator, "If this were our biological grandson, we'd be willing to provide 240,000 yuan as child support. That money is currently held by the village officials. And if he really were our grandson, she could take it. But the fact is, he's not our grandson at all."
我这个孙还是说嘛，就是谁干的，有东西打到了，以前不是有那个都给这些给孙子可以，样样现在还可以。 等走，把他甩走，儿子已经去了，是不是？把他甩走了。
The woman still wouldn't give up, threatening that if they didn't hand over the money, she'd demand an exhumation and autopsy. But such a thing would have too terrible an impact in the village, so she used it as leverage, trying to force the two elderly people to obediently pay up. However, things didn't go according to her plan. Seeing that the old couple wouldn't budge, the woman suddenly left without a word, leaving the mediator alone, unsure of where she'd gone or what she was up to. With nothing else to do, the mediator had no choice but to approach the elderly couple to get a better understanding of the situation. The moment the woman and their son's marriage was brought up, the old couple immediately flared with anger. They recalled how, after this daughter-in-law married into the family, she spent her days idling about, unwilling to work or earn money. She wouldn't even do the most basic housework. As time went on, the household was filled with growing resentment.
这个问题呢，我跟你讲，老婆那个以前也是这样啊，老婆看那个男的幸福啊，好，我那个儿子呢，有一些爽的，总是不给你先好的，丢了他的。
In the end, due to all sorts of conflicts, my son and this woman chose to divorce. After the divorce, they repeatedly asked to see their grandson, but the woman always refused. Later, with the village officials' mediation, they finally managed to secure custody of the grandson. However, when it came time to transfer guardianship, they nearly died of anger, because it turned out the grandson had no blood relation to them at all.
把这个手术了，发现血了，真的严重。
就说你们并不是故意去怀疑这个小孩的身世，是因为要办户口，所以才去办了这个东西。
那早就知道这个是，那你不碰这个是不是？就不是你的采血、他血，一切不要，就那边就别血，就把所有的算就不行，发现2次不对。
The next day, the woman brought her son to her ex-husband's grave. They were about to exhume the body for an autopsy, when the mediator stepped in and stopped them. They were then taken to the village committee. There, her former father-in-law said, "If you don't trust the DNA results between the grandfather and grandson, we can do it again. You can decide where the test takes place." Who would have thought that upon hearing this, the woman's illiterate father flew into a rage?
跟摔出来了防疫，对吧？你这不对了，你摔有防疫，原来你再给传来防疫就可以，对吧？
In the end, they brought the woman and her illiterate family to the police station, where the police patiently explained everything to them. Finally, they settled on the plan for the grandfather-grandson DNA test. The report came out quickly. The former father-in-law gave the woman a way out, saying, "If we don't open this report, we can still treat the grandson as our own. After all, we've already lost our son. But if this report is opened, our two families will become enemies from then on." The woman, however, thought the old man was scared, so she didn't hesitate and opened the report.
根据检验结果，支持小孩跟妈妈之间存在亲生血缘关系，就排除了就是说医院报错各种情况，好吧？那现在就是我来念第二个结果，支持被检测夫妇这不是孩子登录学祖父母的假设。
是不是是吧？不是没有的，没有血缘关系，
没有血缘关系。
The room fell into a deathly silence. All eyes turned to the woman. Faced with her biological father's accusations, she remained unmoved. Her former in-laws didn't say anything either. They just silently left the place. From that moment on, all ties were completely severed. Meanwhile, the woman's biological father grew even more furious, realizing he'd been deceived by his own daughter, and had done something so shameful that he could no longer hold his head up in the village.
你对你爸妈是不是有亏嘞？对小孩是有亏的啦。跟你讲，我觉得最好的方法就去道个歉。这个事情到这一步，你认错，还有人可以原谅你，是不？把这个事情结束掉。郑家爷爷奶奶那边还可以有回转。如果错了就道歉，没有人会说你。这个错误尽早的结束，你不要小气。
是吧？人家那个哪，我为了结果你， 结果你妈个顶家里去死了。
Finally, under the mediator's persistent questioning, the woman revealed the truth. It turned out that before marrying her ex-husband, she had a brief fling with a young guy from the factory. She never imagined that those few short nights would result in a pregnancy. However, when the mediator asked her what she planned to do next, the ignorant woman actually said she still wanted to go through the courts to claim a share of her ex-husband's compensation money.
就是通过法院要小孩，就是理所当然，所有的那些都通过法院来判嘛。
你知道后果是什么吗？
我知道，
后果你可以承担吗？
可以。
可以承担。
This is obviously impossible. Yet, despite the ironclad evidence, she still dares to set her sights on that money. The mediator said they truly couldn't understand it, and the lawyer from the production team also admitted they were baffled. Let's hear what the lawyer has to say.
在这个男方已经死亡的情况下啊，他这个非婚的一个女方现在带来一个小孩所主张还要参与这个死亡赔偿金的分配啊，在这种情况下，而且他们已经进行了司法鉴定，也认定了他们这个所谓的小孩啊跟这个死者之间并没有血缘关系。如果这个鉴定结论是准确的话，那么他这个所谓的小孩啊是不能够参与。
If your girlfriend or wife cheats, in most cases, she won't easily admit it. Instead, she'll likely do everything she can to twist the facts and shift all the blame onto you. She'll come up with all sorts of excuses, listing your faults, like how you didn't care enough about her, had a bad temper, weren't financially well off, or were too busy with work to pay attention to her feelings. During arguments, she'll go to great lengths to dodge the fact of her infidelity, redirecting the focus to your issues, making you feel like you're the one responsible for the relationship falling apart. Not only that, she'll keep attacking you, trying to pile on accusations and guilt to lessen her own responsibility and losses. She hopes that by doing this, she can make you emotionally fragile, even to the point of doubting yourself, wondering if you really didn't do enough, driving her to seek new love. At the same time, her friends and relatives are likely to be misled as well. She'll play the victim in front of them, tearfully recounting how much she's suffered in this relationship. She might tell them you treated her horribly, even hinting at things like domestic violence, emotional neglect, or uncontrollable temper, suggesting she had no choice but to find comfort elsewhere. In her narrative, she's just an innocent little rabbit, hurt in the relationship, completely blameless, and forced into cheating out of desperation. And when you try to explain yourself to her friends or family, they've often already been swayed by her words. They'll view your side with skepticism, maybe even siding with her and blaming you. At that point, you're not just dealing with her betrayal, you might also face moral condemnation from her loved ones, as if all the fault is yours and she's merely an innocent victim. In the end, amid all the chaos and misunderstanding, you might realize that no matter how you explain it, salvaging your reputation is nearly impossible. Her infidelity doesn't just destroy your relationship, it might also paint you as the bad guy in the court of public opinion, leaving you to suffer a double blow.
If a woman cheats during marriage and gets involved with another man, as the original husband, you should stop entanglement with her. Don't try to reason with her or beg her to come back and live a good life with you. Whether you threaten her with harsh tactics to keep her away from that other man or try to win her back with emotional appeals, it's all pointless. Why? Because if a woman can go out and mess around with someone else, she's already done everything imaginable. Her heart is long gone. All she thinks about now is how to chat with that man, asking what he's doing if he misses her, and when they can meet up again. She and that guy are constantly planning how to have fun, how to enjoy themselves, and how to live that thrilling, flirtatious life. Her heart has flown far beyond the clouds. It's no longer with you. So, no matter what tactics you use, hard or soft, against someone whose heart isn't with you, it's useless. Seriously, stop wasting your energy. Talking to someone who doesn't even want to hear you is meaningless. She'll just think you can't live without her, which makes her feel more charming and valuable, while you end up looking desperate and weak. This approach will only push her away faster. She'll feel annoyed just seeing you, rejecting you outright. She won't listen to anything you say, and everything you do will seem wrong to her. That's the reality. Does that mean you're really that bad? Are you ugly, worthless, or incapable of making money? Or is the other guy some kind of amazing catch? Handsome, rich, and talented? Not necessarily. In most cases, over 90% of the time, the other man isn't even as good as you, the original husband. So why can't she see your worth? Why does she think that guy is so appealing, full of desire for him, wanting to be with him? The reason is simple. She's used to you being good to her. She's so accustomed to it that she doesn't care anymore. You've spoiled her, and she's no longer interested in how you feel. But that other man. He's new, unfamiliar, a mystery to her. She's curious about him, eager to explore him. Plus, he doesn't spoil her like you do or treat her overly well. So she feels a challenge, a desire to conquer him. Making a stranger fall for her gives her a huge sense of achievement and makes her feel incredibly attractive. That's the mindset of a woman who's strayed. The other man sparks all kinds of desires in her. But can they really make it work if they get together? Absolutely not. After a while, it'll be no different from the marriage she had with you. Maybe even worse. It'll fade into the same routine. That's why I strongly recommend separating from her as quickly as possible once you find out she's cheating. Some might say, wait it out. Once she's had her fun and hits a wall, she'll come back. You don't need to rush into a split. Divorce lowers the chances of her returning. If you don't split, she'll still have a home to come back to when she crashes, and you might reconcile easier. Is that what you're thinking? But let me tell you, I've seen too many cases like this. At first, the woman is willing to leave, but the man isn't. He waits at home, hoping she'll hit rock bottom and come back so they can pick up where they left off. But after a few months, say half a year, she does return, and by then the man's hair has gone gray from stress. He's lost 20 or 30 pounds and he's a wreck. And what happens? She comes back but barely acknowledges him. She won't talk, and if he asks too many questions, she gets irritated. They're living under the same roof, but her heart isn't with him. He can't sleep at night, constantly wondering if she's texting another guy again. Day after day, he's mentally tortured, unable to work or live normally. This kind of pain, it's no exaggeration to say it's life-threatening. Meanwhile, that cheating woman. She eats, drinks, and carries on like nothing's wrong, completely ignoring his feelings. Eventually, the man can't take it anymore. He stops trying to save the marriage and starts thinking about saving himself because the pain is unbearable. In the end, he files for divorce. Since she won't agree, he ends up giving her half the assets. That's why I keep saying, when a woman cheats, very few Chinese men can handle it. Sure, there are rare cases where both sides agree to play their own games, but those are exceptions. In this situation, the first thing a man needs to save isn't the marriage. It's himself. How? Step 1: divorce. Divorce lets your emotions start to heal, pulling you out of that self-destructive spiral. Once you've sorted yourself out and stopped hurting, you can deal with the emotional fallout and the financial mess. Emotions are just about you and her. Finances mean securing your assets fast, boosting your leverage so you can hold your own in the future and turn your life around. My go-to advice is a 3-step plan. Divorce, work out, date again. Whether you want her to regret it or just want to move on, it works. But honestly, few guys can pull it off. So, when it comes to a woman cheating, I'll break down her real thoughts, where things are headed, and what you and your family can do to avoid more mistakes. Men, you've got to step up and take action. Let's dig deeper. What's going through her mind after she cheats? It's simple, she's numb to you. To her, you're like an old piece of furniture. Too familiar, no excitement left. The other guy, even if he's not as good as you, feels new and interesting. She'll exaggerate his strengths and even imagine qualities he doesn't have. She doesn't truly love him. She's in love with the thrill, the freshness, the attention. Being with him makes her feel alive again, like she's back in her youthful dating days. How long does that last? I'll tell you. 6 months to a year tops. Once the novelty wears off, she'll see he's nothing special. Without the years of foundation you two had, she might even find it less stable than life with you. But here's the catch. By the time she realizes this, will you still be waiting? Most men can't hold out that long. The torment is too much. So guys, get this. her heart leaving isn't your fault. You don't need to prove you're better than him or beat yourself up over what you didn't do. Love isn't something you can force. Her cheating is her failure, her disrespect to the marriage. All you can do is live better for yourself, not waste time on her. After divorce, what's next? Don't lock yourself away or wallow in misery. Get moving, hit the gym, pick up a new skill, keep busy. A healthy body leads to a healthier mind. Then dip your toes back into dating. Not to rush into another marriage, but to feel loved and valued again. You'll see the world's big, and plenty of people are worth your time. On the money side, act fast. A cheating woman often demands a big chunk in divorce. Protect what you can or you'll lose everything. Sure, it stings to split what you earned, but if you keep her around, she'll drain it anyway. Cut your losses and take control. If you've got kids, it's trickier. Many stay for the kids, but that often backfires. You break down and the kids suffer too. Kids aren't dumb, they sense the tension. Better to give them a healthy space than a home full of fights. Post-divorce, talk to them. Make sure they know it's not their fault. Fight for custody if you can, or at least stay connected. Don't let them pay for your mess. Lastly, men need a line in the sand. Cheating isn't a small slip-up she can cute her way out of. She didn't just betray you, she betrayed the home you built. Forgive her once if you must, but don't expect change. Stats show a 70% chance she'll cheat again. Willing to roll those dice. If not, let go fast. So brothers, don't delay, don't wait, don't dream. Divorce first, then live better. Time will prove you right. Your life shouldn't be ruined by someone who's checked out. What do you think? Let's keep talking details.